Hi, everybody. Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching. And let me know if you're here. Say hi. And if you catch this on the replay, say hashtag replay. I wanted to talk today about how to avoid growing roots of resentment with your child because it's a thing that I talk to parents about a lot when we speak on the phone or in my with clients. And I think that it's important to dissect this because the big challenge that I notice lots of parents struggle with is that you don't see it coming. Eventually when, you're dealing with these meltdowns and you're starting to see your child's behavior impact how you sleep, impact how your day goes, impact your other kids. It wears on you. It creates exhaustion. You're wiped out at the end of the day, and that might not be because your kid is having tear felt meltdowns or throwing their body on the floor, but it could just be the constant, consistent reactivity or shutting down and not really knowing how to respond. So, it's hard to quantify the word meltdown for any parent because every family is different. And it's also true that there's lots of themes when I speak with parents about what they're struggling with. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today is one of the themes and noticing and how to get out ahead of the sense of resentment, the sense of dread that you're feeling when your child is struggling and how to avoid that emotion at most costs. Well, without necessarily shaming yourself for experiencing that because it is so hard to parent a highly sensitive child without the right support strategies and practical application of skills. And so I wanted to take some time today to really paint a picture about what it is that I hear parents are dealing with before we get into what works effectively. And so, when you're in the thick of it, going day by day, trying to manage your child's emotions, trying to find different ways to capture how to respond, it can feel like you're on a hamster wheel. Your child is upset one moment, and then the next moment, everything's fine. Maybe you tried a strategy that I advised and it worked today, but it didn't work yesterday. And so you can end up feeling like you're caught in the eye of a storm, to speak in a metaphor, like being in the middle of a hurricane. And so you can see your child's emotions swimming around you, and maybe you're not even there yet where you can observe it, but just kind of feeling like you're being tossed about in that hurricane. And when you're noticing that, it can start to feel like your child has more control over you than you do. And that is what leads to this breeding of resentment, the sense of feeling like you don't have any control, like you don't know where your reactions are going to come from and whether or not you're able to manage your own emotions. And the sense that your kiddo can set you off, for lack of a better word, whether that be, an emotional reaction like you're yelling or threatening with taking away privileges or what have you, or it's just the emotional reaction you have internally if you're able to feel constricted in that moment and not hold back any sort of emotional reaction towards your kid. The thoughts in your head are still there. So when I talk to parents about this sense of dreading waking up or dreading going to sleep or dreading any part of the day, um, it's a deep-seated problem. It kind of comes as a surprise when we notice it and when you start to notice it. And it's also true that it sneaks up on you, and that's what we're talking about today is that sense of not knowing what it is that you need to do so that you don't feel that emotion on a regular basis. So, I always teach that any emotion is safe and okay, and as long as we know how to contain it, as long as we know how to experience it in moderation, and also feel like we can experience it to its fullest and bring it back in. And that's a big challenge for highly sensitive kids. And it's also a big challenge for parents of highly sensitive kids, especially if you don't have direct support or strategies. And that's what we're talking about today is really finding a way to identify when resentment starts creeping up, identify what it looks like, what it feels like, and then knowing what to do about it and what helps. And so the first key piece is to recognize that just like any plant, any weed, resentment grows, well, I should say not every weed, but resentment will grow slowly. It doesn't just like sprout up like an oak tree, overnight, right? There needs to be roots that are solidified in the soil, and they just dig down deeper. And I have a pretty brown thumb, so I'm not going to go any further into this metaphor because I'm going to jack it up. But basically, what I'm getting at here is that this deep-seated resentment that I hear parents of teens express significantly, it doesn't happen overnight, and so it's really important to be cognizant of that, because by the time you get to the point where your kid is 11, 12, 13 or older, if you're feeling that resentment while your child is 6, 7, 8, then it's inevitable without getting out and ahead of it, and it's just going to feel, I've talked about this before, it's going to feel more like your kid is the problem and they need to fix it, and you've given up. You're you've had enough. And so um, resentment can present itself in different ways. It can be tension in the body, it can be stomach aches, it can be just actively being passive, so like actively choosing not to deal with it until the worst, like the last possible minute, so procrastination. Um, and that might be, preparing your kid for something new, or getting your kid out the door, or um, starting a new routine, anything like that. It's seated in resentment. It's seated in the worry that you won't be able to achieve what it is that you're planning on achieving, because you feel like your child is more in control. And that's that perception that we're talking about today, is the lack of being in control of your own emotions, or in control of your own life, and in control of your own um, your family's path, journey, whatever values you want to instill upon your children and your family. And when you feel blocked from that goal, resentment breeds, and it can lead to angry outbursts. It can lead to saying things that you don't mean. It can lead to a frequent frustration, and just feeling like your back's up against the wall, or you're trying to run against a brick wall, and feeling trapped. And when you feel trapped, your child feels trapped, and your child feels like there's no way to get out of that cycle as well. And the only thing they can do is be that hurricane that you see them to be at this point. And the goal is to be the airplane above the hurricane. And I'm probably jacking that metaphor up as well, but the goal is to get outside of the hurricane, to get out. Maybe you need to be the satellite. That probably makes more sense. I don't know if an airplane could fly above a hurricane, but you need to be. The goal is to be above that situation, and to know and see how you can. The fact that the storm will calm, the fact that the struggle will subside with support and skills, and to feel capable in that. And the first thing that you need to do that, is to recognize what it is that beats resentment, and that's unconditional love. So it's really important to recognize this as a pie in the sky concept, unconditional love, but then also what that looks like in life. If you're getting to the point where you're withdrawing your support because your child is emotionally reactive, then that is a sign of conditional love. I can only be supportive to you as long as you don't overwhelm me. And for children, that really is pretty scary, that the parent who's supposed to be secure and supporting them grow, um, if you as the parent, your child's parent, are not able to identify how to keep yourself calm and supportive when your child is experiencing these meltdowns or experiencing this ineffective behavior, then your child will feel untethered. Will feel like the hurricane, with at a whim could go left or right on land, um, destroy houses in its mix, and without the ability to acknowledge and practice regularly the ability to feel content in how your child is experiencing their emotions now, and then content in how you'll get them to experience the emotions more effectively in the future, that resentment will continue to breed, and your child will feel that in themselves. We know that highly sensitive kids are really intuitive and empathic, and so they can feel your sense of lack of control, and they can sense your resentment, and they can sense the fact that you're pissed or annoyed that you're not able to get out the door, or that your kid's sibling is missing out on their activity, or that you were in the middle of enjoying something with your kid sibling, and they're coming in because they need you, and then throwing getting out of control with their emotions because they're not able to get your attention and support in that current moment. So your child hears that, feels that, experiences that from you, and without being a way to giving yourself the skill of checking yourself and hearing that, and steadying yourself in that moment, your child will feel the resentment that is underneath the surface of anger, irritation, or annoyance. And I see some of you are watching, so say hi and comment. I can see what you have to say about this, and if this resonates with you, send an emoji as well. And what I wanted to talk about here is the concept of unconditional love is awesome, right? We recognize that if we can love our children despite their emotions, because of their emotions, no matter their emotions, then we can feel so perfect in our experience in our relationship with our child. And it's also true that that's really freaking hard if you have no idea what you're doing with parenting your highly sensitive kid, or if that's just a feeling you feel a lot of the time, or some of the time, or frequently, on a weekly basis. And so if we think about sustaining that, we can recognize that clear strategies for parenting can give that sense of peace of mind, but they don't eliminate the emotion behind that reaction to our child. And so that's kind of another thing that I'm talking about here, is that you can have strategies of what's going to work this week for your kid, or you can have an identification of what keeps your child less reactive, like addressing diet or packing fidgets. But if you don't have a clear picture or clear direction on how you're able to tap into this sense of unconditional love, even when you're challenged by your child's behavior, even when you start to feel anger, irritation, or annoyance, that is what breeds resentment. And so Olivia says, I'm late to this party, but yes, I feel like yet again I lose more of myself even with the ability to have feelings. And so that's definitely a challenge, right? You can feel like you're not you when your child's emotions are a hurricane. You're in survival mode at this point. And Olivia, I can sense that that's a challenge. I can imagine that's a challenge for you. That all you can do in that moment is just get your kid to stop, or all you can do in this moment is to get your kid to slow down, or all you can do in this moment is to react, because you don't have that skill of bringing yourself back in and slowing down and recognizing what it is that impacts your child's relationship with you, because as you view your child will view him or herself. And when that is frequently met with resentment or anger or frustration, then your child will start to think, I'm annoying, I'm frustrating, and I'm a problem. And that perpetuates their behavior, because when they're not able to feel okay and competent and capable and safe, then they won't be able to feel competent, capable, and safe in changing either. So it's really important to recognize that the difference between reactive strategies to calm down your child and a solid foundation of what prevents the meltdowns in the first place, because you're tapped into the relationship you have with your kid. And that's really the key piece, is this unwavering tenet of unconditional love. And we as humans strive to do that, no matter your spiritual guidance, like whether or not you're spiritual or religious or what have you, the sense of feeling like there's a knowing inside you that things will get better, or that that everything will be okay. And part of that is required. I shouldn't say part of that. All of that is required to parent any child, but especially a parent of highly sensitive uh, kid, because the fact that your child takes it all in and takes it in with a layer of shame is really challenging for your kid to move out in front of that behavior if they feel like whatever they're doing right now to express themselves is met with a block, met with a hypervigilance, met with tension in your shoulders, met with uh, a raised eyebrow all of the time, or their perception of all of the time, your kid's perception of all of the time. And because highly sensitive kids are just 20% of the population or less, the other 80% of the population doesn't have this knowledge you have. It doesn't have this ability to, or the desire, nor the motivation, nor the insight that this unconditional love is what's going to prevent your kid from creating that self-fulfilling prophecy, like the fact that I feel like crap, therefore I will be a crap person. Um, and that's why it's so important for parents of highly sensitive kids to practice loving your child unconditionally. And the key part of that is that you need to be able to do that even when your child is struggling, and even when your child is not living up to your expectations or your standards, or just getting out the door on time. Because without that practice, and without being able to recall quickly the fact that you love your child regardless of how they're acting at this point, um, you won't be able to stop those roots of resentment. You won't be able to. You'll be working reactively by chopping them down, and maybe successful by sending your kid to therapy and doing family therapy and going to a therapy yourself. And so if working out ahead of that, or responding in that way, um, with a different perspective, can really help change the effect you have on your child, so that you're not continuously reactive, so that you're not continuously feeling like you're tethered to your kid's emotions, and not feeling like, I mean, your child is the tugboat when in reality, like, you're the one who's on the yacht. I don't know. I'm all about the metaphors today. Um, and so it's really important for you to allow your child to flourish. You have to have that solid foundation that sets your child up for success, and gives your child that ability to see beyond their moment, because your child feels like that hurricane right now, and they need to see that, like, the houses will be rebuilt, the roads will be rebuilt, and they don't actually have to continue to be a hurricane. That's not solidified in their fate. And so I wanted to just recap at this point to see if you guys are getting it, for those who are alive. Um, the biggest thing that we're talking about, yeah, Beth says, before I get to that, being their rock, being less reactive to the reactions, being willing to suspend our thoughts, or should, both in terms of our own parenting and our kids' behavior. Is that part of unconditional love? Yeah, absolutely. So, um, that's like a huge feat though, right? Like, the ability to do that, and to do that frequently, and not just on your good day, but to notice it quickly on a not so great day and on a bad day for yourself. That is what unconditional love is the sense of being the foundation for your family, and being the foundation for your highly sensitive kid. Because, as we talked about before, your highly sensitive child only grows from within the foundation that you set for your kid. So, if that's wavery and rocky, then your kid is going to be wavery and rocky. And so, I explain it to parents in different ways, but it's the sense of recognizing that your highly sensitive child needs to grow from outside in, whereas most children are taught to grow from inside out. Beth said, yes, super hard, super hard. Yeah. And this is a huge thing that parents really get tripped up with, because the majority of the population, 80%, does really well with growing from the inside out. Um, I got to fix myself, and therefore my environment will be healthier. And that doesn't work with highly sensitive kids. And this is like the tenet of my work here on the internet and in my private practice. But it's really hard to wrap yourself around the fact that you, as your child's parent, are the one who changes your child's behavior. And your child cannot grow and meet the expectations of the environment if the environment doesn't shift and change. And you, as your child's parent, is the tenant, are the tenant of that environment. And setting yourself up for feeling resentment is really easy to do without daily practice of practicing, how you see your child as the end, viewing the end game in mind, and expressing that goal to yourself and feeling it and hearing it frequently. Because without that, it will be really challenging to manage the fact that you need to help your child get out ahead of their own emotions. Because if you're not able to get out ahead of your child's emotions, then how can they get out ahead of their own? Aside from threatening them or telling them that you'll take this stuff away, or saying, I need to be the one to control you because you can't control yourself, or just, dealing with that top-down mentality. That's not the control that I'm telling you to teach. That's not what I'm helping to foster in you as a parent. What I'm really focused on is helping you be that unconditional underlying sense of safety and security for your child. Because without it, your child will not feel like they can move forward. And so, like I said before, there's lots of different strategies to address that. To summarize what we were talking about, roots of resentment grow slowly, and then they come up as a surprise for lots of parents. And without that regular practice of practicing unconditional love, it can be quite challenging for parents of highly sensitive kids to recall that in the moment when your child is having a meltdown, and slow your body down, and decrease the tension in your shoulders, and however else you experience it. Because, like you said, you're in the middle of that hurricane. You're just spinning around with your kid, and waiting for your child to grow and develop the skills, waiting for your child to mature, waiting for your child to grow out of it. And when you take that perspective, or when you take the perspective of feeling like your kid's the one who needs to learn the skills, and I just need to teach my kid, and we talk about the meltdown afterwards, that still sends the same message that your child is fully in control when they're not. They're not fully in control when they're overwhelmed and overstimulated and feeling all the feels. And it perpetuates the problem for your child to hear that what they can do differently next time, without the ability for you to slow your reaction down and change how you respond and change how you teach your child. That is going to continue to be a challenge for your kid. So if you feel like you need help getting out ahead of it and struggling with feeling resentment, or worried that that's going to it's getting to the point where you're starting to dread the day with your child, then I can absolutely help you change this pattern. I'm going to put the link in the comments when I finish up this conversation, but I would encourage you to set up a call with me so that we can talk about what it is that you're challenged with, and how to manage, how to get out ahead of this, and what would work and what would be more effective for your family, because every family is unique, and it would be important to pay attention to what strategies or successes we need to focus on for your family in particular. So that's it. Since it's Saturday, I'm going home. And I hope that this video was helpful, and that you're able to reach out for support if you're starting to notice that the seeds of resentment have been planted. All right. Thank you. Bye.